Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. This is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. Quick update on our Arctic front and the wintry threat for Saturday. Let's get right to it because it's a lot to talk about and I want to try to get it all in. First thing, we'll look at temperatures right now. We had one front come through this morning. I'm going to turn the temperatures off real quickly here and I'll turn the satellite on real quickly. We've got a lot of high clouds and mid clouds, so it's not going to be completely sunny today, but you're certainly going to see breaks of sunshine at times. You could see this cold air, which is just lurking off to the northwest. The heart of the cold air is actually up here in the Midwest, and there's a couple reinforcing shots of cold air. The first front is the one moving through this morning right there. Here comes the second Arctic front, which is kind of just another surge. This is all just cold air basically coming down that's going to arrive as we go into later today and really tomorrow into Friday. The heart of this cold air extends way up here into Canada, and this is some of the coldest air we've seen so far this season, without a doubt the coldest air of the season so far. Let me go out into the future here and we'll throw the GFS on so you can see how cold it is. Look at that big pool of below zero readings. Anywhere you see that aqua color, that's the below zero temperatures heading our way. So as that Arctic high shifts off to the east, it's going to basically move over New England and then move into the southeast by the time we get into Friday. And that's going to set up our winter weather troubles as we go into Saturday morning. So let's go right to the model guidance. Here's a look at the GFS model. And again, what you're looking at are isobars, which is kind of showing us where the highs are. There's the Arctic high right there this morning, and the Arctic front moving through here, and there's the second surge. You see all that lake effect snow. And yes, there will be a little bit of snow in the mountains, I think, tonight and tomorrow with the northwest flow, but really not a big deal. Just another little dusting to an inch in many locations. So here comes the cold air. The thing to notice right off the bat is where the center of the Arctic high is, because that's really key. There's your surge of moisture into the mountains, which is going to help produce that northwest flow snow in the mountains, and that's really what's going to help keep a little bit of a wintry feel to the mountains for a couple days here because of the snow and the cold air. But here's the Arctic high. You see it over the middle of the country, and it's moving east. So we'll go through the day today into tomorrow morning. The Arctic high is over Indiana, Missouri. It starts to shift to the east. And what's going on here this whole time, because of clockwise flow around high pressure, the cold air is wrapping around and getting pushed down the eastern side of the mountains here in North Carolina, and that's setting up the cold air damming, we call it. You saw the graphic I shared yesterday, and it's on my Facebook page if you missed it, but it really explains how the cold, shallow Arctic air settles down east of the mountains, and that's what you're seeing as we go into Saturday morning. So we start looking at Saturday morning, and there's our Arctic high setting up. This is really Friday setting up, but it's going to be establishing this cold air all east of the mountains. So as we go through Friday night, the same time that Arctic high set up the cold air, there's another thing going on. Look what's going on to the west. We've got a storm system coming out of the Rockies. It's diving down there. It's starting to pull up moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico, and a little bit of moisture starting to get pulled up out of the Atlantic, because the high, even though it's pumping down air like this, the wider flow is actually coming around like this. And so now we've got moisture coming at us from a couple different directions. Now it's super dry, shallow moisture, but with the Arctic air in place, it's going to easily ride up and over the cold air, which is now established east of the mountains. So let me switch to temperatures real quickly, and you can see that pocket of cold air, which is now wedged up against the mountains, and it's actually colder here than it is over here in Tennessee because of that cold air damming, we call it. And that's really the setup that you see oftentimes in the winter. So as that cold air gets established Friday night, here comes the moisture. It starts riding up and over that cold air at the surface, and we start to see a little bit of a wintry mix. Likely sleet mixing with freezing rain. Not a really big snow threat here. The cold air is really shallow. This is all going to start as moisture and fall down. It could refreeze into ice pellets, which would be sleet, or stay liquid and freeze on contact, which is freezing rain. And you can see the freezing rain and mix kind of mixes out pretty quickly. By about 7 a.m. Saturday, there's still some ice, especially north of Charlotte, but by about 10 a.m., it's all rain. It changes pretty quickly. Now, that's the GFS model, which has been very consistent with it, but let me switch to the NAM model. The NAM model is very, very aggressive with this setup. It has the same setup with the cold air, so it does really good with cold air. The NAM model, that's the one thing it's known with, is temperature profiles, but it has a little bit of what we call a QPF bias. It tends to moisten things up a little quickly, and that's what it does here. Starting Friday night, even as soon as like midnight, we start to see moisture coming in, and this looks much heavier. In the pink is ice, the orange would be sleet, And you could see by the time we get to 2 a.m., we've got some heavy sleet and freezing rain. And then you wake up on Saturday morning, we still have some freezing drizzle and mist through about 10 a.m. But even here, the NAM, even though it's a little more aggressive, it too as well mixes these things out pretty quickly. So by the time we get to 10 a.m., things are changing to rain pretty quickly. The worst weather to me looks to be basically right around sunrise. So between 2 a.m. and sunrise, and because the air is going to be so cold, I certainly think we will have some slick spots on the bridges and overpasses. Let me quickly show you the sounding, because this is a temperature product. This gets kind of very sciencey here, but what you're looking at is the GFS model for Saturday morning. And the one thing you notice down at the ground, the air temperature is about 32, 33 degrees, but up here, about a kilometer up or about 5,000 feet, the temperature is almost 10 degrees Celsius, which is above freezing. So really warm air just off the surface with the GFS. The NAM is a little bit colder down at the ground. You can see the temperature here is about 30, so it's below freezing. But that warm nose, we called it. And the reason we call the warm nose, if you ever heard us say that term, it's because if you look at the profile of this line, it looks like a nose sticking out. And then down here is the ground. So that nose, and warm nose, is really, really cold. And just so you know, this is the freezing line down to the surface. And so all the air above the ground is above freezing except for right near the ground. That's your classic freezing rain setup. So the difference in the two models, honestly, is that the ground temperature is just a little bit colder in the NAM than it is the GFS. But in both models, there is not a ton of precipitation to work with. So you're not looking at heavy icing power lines, massive ice storm. What you're looking at is a light glaze early Saturday morning, mainly on bridges and overpasses because they get so cold. So I certainly think we will almost without a doubt have a freezing rain advisory or freezing drizzle advisory issued for Saturday morning. And if you're traveling between 2 a.m. to about 10 a.m. Saturday, then that is the time frame that we will have some slick weather on the road. So that's what I'm thinking right now. I'm going to stay on top of this, but again, this is really going to be short, brief, low impact for a very short period of time. The biggest concern, 2 a.m. to about 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. So that's the latest. If anything changes, I will post it on my Facebook page, Twitter feed. Please make sure your friends are following me on Facebook. Let them know. I'll keep things up to date so they're not surprised about these things. And please be safe if you're traveling early Saturday, and stay tuned for any changes. This could get a little icier or even go down. The thing we have is plenty of cold air for a short period of time. The thing we don't have right now is a lot of moisture. If more moisture comes in quicker, then things could become more serious. If things work the way they are now, then things are going to warm up so quickly. If everything slows down, we may not have any event at all. So the slowing down would be the thing that would slow and kind of kill everything completely. So went 8 minutes there, longer than I expected. As always, hope you're having a great Wednesday. And please tune in today at 4, 5, and 6 in NBC Charlotte, and I'll have you covered when we look ahead to the Arctic front and the ice.